Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Tom Parlin is my name. For my sins, I'm the Director General of the Construction Industry Federation. I'll just be about 6 years in the job, and unfortunately, and entirely coincidentally, it coincided with the decline. I think the late Brian Lenihan spoke at an international conference we had around that time, and he said his coming into the Department of Finance coincided with the thundering halt of the construction industry and I suppose the Irish economy. But we're not going to dwell on that too much. I am reminded that my first engagement before I was actually appointed was to speak at the Irish Times Property Awards when everybody was in denial with regard to how the property market was going to go. But I think the following year, maybe 2 years later, Ivan Yates, who was former minister and former head of Celtic Bookmakers and a presenter at that time, I think on News Talk, and life has changed for him since. He was the speaker, and people were still in denial about the property downturn, and it was a blip, and it was this, that, and the other. And I met Ivan on the way in, and we had a bit of a chat. And he said, "Well, Tom, how are things?" And I said, "Look, not too bad. I think we're just about to turn the corner." Now, this is unfortunately about 2009, I'd say. So he said, "Geez, that's good." So he got up and he introduced himself, and he said, "The good news, ladies and gentlemen," he said, "I met Tom Parlin on the way in," he said, "and he tells me we're just about to turn the corner. The bad news is," he said, "this is the fourth time I've heard him say it in the last 2 years." So I decided I wasn't going to look at turning that corner anymore. But I was sort of heartened a bit this morning in the Irish Times, where I see the actual commentator saying, "They think we're about to turn the corner on the property prices," and for the first time since 2008, commercial and residential property prices in Ireland have had a minor but a steady increase. So whether we turn the corner or hit the bottom, I'm not so sure. Anyhow, this morning's meeting is about BIM. The one thing I learned last night when I met Alan and some of the speakers, that BIMers don't really wear ties and they're quite informal, so I have mine in my pocket just in case it was going to be a very formal event. So you're all very welcome. This is a part of a series of workshops organised by the Construction Information Technology Alliance, who I believe are doing a very good job, and a bit like my own job, in a difficult environment when you're introducing a new concept, it's difficult enough to get traction on that. This morning the focus is on contractors, and we have 3 of our main contractors, and delighted to say they're all very strong members of the Construction Industry Federation in terms of BAM, CISC and Kirby, and some of their senior BAM people are going to give presentations with regard to how their company are operating and so on. And I know that the bright spot, I suppose, in the Irish construction industry over the last 6 years, when everything else was going downhill, was the foreign direct investment, and the fact that we have some of the top companies in the world in terms of pharmaceuticals, in terms of technology and so on, the Allergens, the Eli Lillys, the Intels and so on, and they have sort of brought, I suppose, the best technology in the world here, and they would publicly and regularly say that the practitioners that they have working for them in Ireland are the best that they've met anywhere, and they have regularly re-employed them elsewhere in the world, and I think that's a good thing for our industry. But they're also driving technology, and while some of our traditional construction companies, and I've never really got a big push in CIF for my members to say, look, let's get involved in promoting BIM. I'm certainly conscious of it, but I think it's something, and having spoken to Alan last night and some of the speakers here, it's an area that I'm very, very keen to get involved. And it's like a lot of newfangled ideas, whether it was the motor car or the telephone or even Twitter or the internet or the smoking ban or whatever, people just immediately said it'll never catch on. And to great embarrassment of some people. So there are been people who said BIM will never catch on, but I believe it's here to stay, and I think just the industry are just in maybe a wait and see mode, and hopefully this morning's presentations will show throw some more light upon that. In the whole area that it's in terms of BIM and what it is, and I checked it out this morning before, again, to be sure in my own head, and looking at the Google description. It's a process involving the generation and the management of digital representation of physical and functional characteristics of a facility. And that seems all very straightforward and nothing to be afraid of. I suppose the fear maybe that some people within the system, and whether you're a main contractor, subcontractor or otherwise, is that the whole contracts arrangement that we've had in this country for the last number of years has become so adversarial, and everybody is looking at an angle and protecting their corner and trying to protect really their being. And we are promised now a review. And yesterday evening, the only other bit of good news, I was in the Shannon for the final signing off of the new construction contracts bill, and that will be implemented fairly soon. And David O'Brien, who's the head of contracts within government, typically, as soon as he had sort of delivered that, I said to him, when are we having the review of the contracts? And he said, October, formally beginning in October. So hopefully there's a bit of good news around the corner. But BIM is not designed to give advantage to anyone. And maybe some of the guys that are in very early say, well, look, we'll get very high on BIM and we'll have an advantage over it. I think it's about improving visualization. I'm not an academic or I'm not a professional, and if I even look at a plan of a house, or if there was somebody doing a job for me in my own house or apartment, I wouldn't really be able to visualize from the plan. That's in 2D what it was going to be. But I think BIM is able to give a much better visualization of what is there. It improves productivity. I think there's no question about that. It increases coordination between all the different players in a project. It speeds up delivery, and that's what everybody wants at the moment. It reduces costs, and what I would hope for the construction professionals, that it will provide a bit of profit for them as well. And that hasn't been such a factor in the business over the last period. So I'm not going to go on any longer. I was supposed to have 10 minutes. I've done it a little bit shorter. I'm restricting all, and I've been advised by Alan. I'm just a referee here. I didn't make the rules. I'm just here to implement them. But I'm restricting each speaker to 20 minutes because we have a big schedule. And I know from meeting them last night, their enthusiasm for their particular area of expertise is quite substantial, and I'd be concerned a little bit that they might get carried away and go on a bit. So I'll be advising them, and I'll be sitting here just out of eyeshot with a little bit of a tap that they've got 2 minutes to go, and hopefully people will get through their stuff by then. So our first speaker is Andrew Pryke. He's the Managing Director of BAM Construct Limited. I met Andrew last night, and he spent 24 years as a director of James Sterling, Michael Wilford and Associates, and John McAslin and Partners. And he's delivered a number of award-winning projects. Some of them I didn't hear before last night, but I'm told are very impressive. The Lowry #1 Poultry, Peter Jones, and the Royal Academy of Music. He's been a board member and a board director at Capita Simmons, and he led the BIM strategy for architecture, and he's worked with the most of the key UK developers. He's MD at Multi-D 100 Plus Design Studio for BAM Design, and is the BAM director across BAM Constructs UK Property Development Design and Construction. So we're looking forward, Andrew, to your presentation. I'll give you a little tip when you've got 2 minutes to go, and you'll be getting a red card after that. So look forward to your attention to the speakers, and I'm certainly looking forward to hearing them myself. So, Andrew, you're on. Thank you.
Okay, while we're just setting that up as my 20 minutes has started, I've got to go fairly quickly because this wasn't assuming it was going to be 30 minutes. I'm going to move fairly quickly. Apologies for that, but by all means, ask questions as we go through. We've got that up. Okay, yeah, I'm an architect, so it's not an apology, but just to highlight that I've been 9 months now at BAM, but I'm learning a lot about the other side, the light, I've said, rather than the dark side of consultancy. But anyway, what I'm here is to talk about Muddy Boots, BIM, BIM on the work face, basically. Just those who don't know BAM, we cover all aspects from property development, from design, which I lead up, the 100 multidisciplinary practice, to construction, to facilities management. And that's quite important, why BIM has been very important as part of BAM. Done a number of buildings with BAM, a number of key buildings, although, you know, Leeds Arena, the cooperative building, etc., the transport building in Glasgow, and a lot of the King's Cross. We've just won the Google headquarters, £300 million, but I think the fact is that the question that came up last night, well, fantastic, big contractor, but what about the small projects? We're doing £2 to £3 million schools, refurbishments as well. Everything we do is in BIM, part of design, and most of the projects, all new projects, are in BIM. But from our point of view, BIM is really about the data collected. It's not about doing 3D design, etc. And I'll explain a bit more about that. And what we see is, yeah, it's not about data, as my secretary found a slide and said, there you go, I've got a slide for you. But in a sense, those Trekkie fans out there, data is this Android computer that absorbs information and helps the team move things on. And that really is what sort of BIM's about. It's coordination, collaboration, and being more efficient, improving margins, enjoying the process, and improving the building process as such. So it is about that cradle to cradle, working through the building industry, and that gathering that information. But the purpose is, why are you gathering that information? And it comes back to understanding who's going to use the building, who's going to operate the building, the client. It's not, I mean, yes, there are great advantages for the construction industry, for designers, but that's secondary. Must be about improving buildings for the people that use them and our clients. So first point of view is understanding what data the client needs and what data is used to operate that building. Typical project, numerous data, how do you start to collect that and what does that mean? Well, what we tend to do is break that down into those silos initially of what, design data, construction and operational data. I think the fact is the construction industry is way behind. If you take your car and you go into any manufacturing place and you want a new, a piece of kit, it's scheduled, it's costed, you can get a price, you can compare and whatever. The building industry isn't like that, and you think, well, why shouldn't it be? Surely there must be something like that. And since you look at Google, and what they're trying to do is bring the Internet of Things, trying to bring this information to hand to everybody around, and from your smartphone you can pick up anything of information. So you think, well, why not start to see what we can do? But I suppose we've got to get real. Data, it's about how you use it to make a difference. And we should be looking at BIM to do a better service, fantastic facilities, less faults, cheaper to run, design well, built well, operated well. I think no one would probably disagree with that. So what are those industry challenges, what we find? Well, apologies, in the UK, there are issues and cuts, and we're all under extreme pressure to cut costs. Government bodies are having to take 20% cuts. Hence, looking at BIM and various modes, and it's been mandated in 2010. By 2016, all projects should have 3D digital format with the data drops associated with that. But it's been, for the past sort of 3 to 5 years, it's a bit of a desert out there. Projects are few and far between, you can't use those. And when the projects are out there, it's more of a war zone to try and get those projects. And our clients have different views of what we think they are to what they think they are. So it's understanding what that's about. So we really need to know what our customers' expectations are and what it is. And I think that's the key. What we try to do is understand where our clients are coming from, where our customers are coming from, what the building's used for, and that sets the whole mode. But picking up what Tom said, I think the key thing, and what the government realised in the UK, and I think it's very typical, is waste is our Achilles heel. There's so much waste in the industry. In a sense, the government looked at where that waste is, and there's 20% increased cost in the construction industry. And actually, BAM ourselves, we feel we're pretty efficient, but actually when you start to analyse it, you think, well, actually, how much waste material goes in skips? Forget about the cost of the waste material, you could save so much money on just reducing the number of skips. We actually worked out, and that's an immense amount, but actually, BIM can actually start to review how we can improve those matters. Obviously, efficiency, construction industry is not the most efficient industry. If you look at manufacturing, far more efficient. 75% of costs are spent on site, yet only 10% invest on technology. Now, BIM is 80% about people and process, 20% about technology. I think people get so wound up about technology, and apologies for Autodesk, Bentley Systems and everything else here. I know they're here to sell that. But actually, it's about the collaboration and working better together and how you work together. And I think that's the key thing. If anything would go away, it's how we can do that and improve that, to actually work, enjoy what we do, but improve matters. So up to now, construction industry is a fragmented approach. Designers, we design, hand over the information, there you go, it's up to you, go and build that. Constructors, build a building, throw the keys to the client, say it's your building now, run away and don't want to see the building again. Not the most efficient way of doing things. At BAM, we say a better way to build better buildings is the way we try to look at things. So we try to demolish those silos and look at overlaps and how that collaboration can work together, and obviously try to minimise the unfortunate incidents. I did look at the one on the right and I thought, what was the problem with that? But anyway, that's another matter. And it's working together, and great things can happen together. And again, nothing new, but a lot of construction is about design build, what we call little BIM. And it's got to take the steer from manufacturing and understand from the what's this define and validate, design and prototype, manufacture and assemble, operate and maintain. it means, I think, actually looking at bringing the contractor on board early, bringing facilities management on board early, and learning what you can do about buildability, how the building operates, and actually it's the betterment of the buildings themselves. That collaboration has gone to an extent, and I know on T5, not taking too much away from the next talk, is that actually working with the Google project and quite a few of our projects now, we work with a bigger room. We get all the team, the external consultants as well as our own, get everybody in a room together and work together for the duration of the project. That means they get to know each other, they work each other's problems out, and actually that, over the water cooler and whatever, issues are dealt with straight away. It's not this email stream of I'm waiting for this information, 2 days later you still haven't got it. Things are dealt with. That's what I talk about is efficiency, and it's how you can operate that. So we're looking at this lean, seamless approach, outcomes focused, reducing waste, etc. So let's move on to take that BIM to the workforce. So what I say is why quality suffers. Basically, designers, we like to keep designing until the building's finished, and it's still afterwards. Construction take a bit longer. Commissioning is left to the last minute, and that's the key thing to operate a building, and there's so little time to do that. What we've started to look at BAM and what we're operating now is actually those efficiencies of how we can actually learn from that process. And again, apologies for moving these slides on so quick. I think they will be available to anybody to look at in close. So it's designed right people, right time. So just picking up the design data, and I thought I'd take a few slides of various people, and I think the architect, there's a lot of big films out there about architects, Paul Newman, etc. And interesting is Paul Newman is sort of this guy that seems to know everything about everything. He's an architect. First scene you see was going into an electrical cupboard and fiddling about with a screwdriver. I wouldn't even want to go there myself, but anyway, that's another matter. But there's a lot of things to learn in that process. And it's a case of looking at what data is required and what information from the architect, structural engineer, MEP, acoustics, etc., and pulling that information too, and looking at that virtually and how that information could be done up front. And it's looking at what we say is build twice, and it's a common term that you may have heard, and that does start to get rid of a lot of the issues which happen on site, so much wastage. So you actually build on the computer, you're looking at reviewing the issues, the clashes, and actually identifying those and sorting those out. And the complexities to the extent that each of those elements, MEP here, this is at King's Cross, and each of those elements now have got intelligent embedded data within those, and you can touch on any element on the computer on those elements, and it'll bring out a data drop on what that information is. So that starts to feed back into how that building will be operated in the end. And that's key, which we're developing within that. So we're driving that efficiency through the supply chain, through fabrication, working with our suppliers, and actually getting them on board. And the supply chain is probably the most difficult, whether it's consultants, because they're looking for the projects, and whether they invest in this so-called expensive BIM technical information. The supply chain is why we've always done it this way. Why should we change? Why do we need this? So we're actually investing in them and helping them come on board and work with us. So as I say, build it twice, virtually, and then on site. So this cycle of information that's moving around. And that goes to logistics planning, 4D BIM, as they say, is actually understanding. It's not only working with the models from our designers and ourselves, it's actually temporary works, how the building can be operated. And things like putting a crane or scaffolding up, you realise it's in the way of something and can actually hinder the whole process and efficiency of how that can be moved. And actually looking at how, exactly where cranes go, this is the Leeds Arena, and actually planning out where those could go, and actually those actually were located in the most efficient place, and that's what's happened. You minimise the number of cranes and actually putting them in the right place to deal the most efficient way with that site. So it's looking at actual and planned, and looking at actually the programme against that, monitoring and picking that up, and actually looking what a lot of our clients want to know is looking at cash flow against that programme and actually keep up to date what's happening. So when it's going to be delivered, exactly when it's going to be delivered, and that gets maintained, but your cash flow as well, and that's fairly key. And actually looking at site meetings, looking at the models, looking at health and safety issues on site, and that's, BIM is becoming the key element of how we deal with things. And that deals with commissioning, and it's quite important. And actually the strategy of how you start to commission a building sets out how you start to split the services and the design as up. This is Bradford College. It was decided to split it up into 3 areas for commissioning, and therefore the services were designed so they can operate and be handed over at each section accordingly. And obviously in 3 dimensions you can understand where everything element goes. So the 4D sequencing itself on Network Rail, it's much more efficient. I'll let you read that, but the improvements there and the engagement and understanding, the early engagement that clients can see what's going to go, what happens, easier decisions made, everyone understands how things are moving forward. Field BIM, looking at construction, there aren't many films about contractors, I'm afraid, so we've got an oil worker, John Wayne, here, and how that can be moved forward. And it's using the effective use of technology. I won't say this is CISC, but that'd be rather rude. But at BAM, we're using a product from Autodesk. It's BIM 360 Field. It's actually using an iPad in the field to actually take the data, everything you need, doing checks, taking paper to digital, bringing the BIM model into there, and actually you have everything to hand on site and how that can be done. And those checks can be done through that. It's understanding the project in the field, temporary works, understanding where things go, as I say, paper to digital format, quality management, safety management, very important and key. And that means that the guys are not going back to the site huts, they're out in the field and they're observing, and there's less accidents because of that. They can see what's going on. Traffic management, and that becomes a real lifetime dashboard that's presented on the screen in the site hut, back in the client's office. They can see exactly what's happening, what the progress, what things are happening there. An issues list is produced, that's automatically produced, there's the key issues that week. They're automatically emailed to the right people and getting a response straight away. So everything's automated, and it's pushing that commissioning data back into the model. In Aylesbury Vale, we're looking at 5D. We're doing Navisworks Takeoff, and we're using Costex to actually improve the cost certainty. So it's the data collected from the design model. Actually, it's important. A lot of designers will say they're doing BIM, they're doing 3D models, but it's the data that's collected within those that actually becomes important to actually feed through. And that means accurate costs from day one at concept all the way through, and you can keep an idea of what's going on. Enablers and barriers, well, it's a winding field up if you Tour de France. If you're cycling, you'll probably quite enjoy, well, you may not enjoy that, but it's interesting anyway. But in a sense, Henry Ford, if you've always done, what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. In a sense, Henry Ford talks about, well, if I listened to the public, I would have just designed a faster horse, or try to get a faster horse. He designed a car. So you actually have to take that leap of faith and move on. Our cost, this is our cost department, and when we said we want to go to BIM 360 Field, Autodesk say, how much is that going to cost? But basically you have to take a leap of faith now and again. Again, things have always been done, and we'd always carry on if we don't make that move. Computers on site, exactly. What on earth? Surely you'll drop them and break them, they'll get stolen. BIM is about culture, it's about how we move on, so the outcomes of that. Leeds Arena, I think there was a talk last year on this. They talk about 500k saving, design and build. I try to keep that, it's actually more than that, but we don't like, the client might get a bit upset if he realises how much saving. I think BIM should be about actually rewards for everybody, and we talked about that last night really, that if everyone gains from it, everyone's more likely to work together, and I think that's a key element of what we should look at. Less savings, the saving, and I think becoming 8% less material waste, and actually that alone, if you could save, it would be amazing. And we're looking at 70% increase in site management productivity with BIM 360 Field. It's just using that simple technology, simple process. Something that would take 4 days is now taking, 4 hours is taking less than an hour to do. That means you've got more, either you have less resource, one way of looking at it, or you can do more with the same resource. So, anticipated field benefits, we've got better buildings, delivering more efficiency, on time, on budget. Customers are enjoying it. What BIM is happening to us is a lot of our private clients that we try knocking on the door and they won't let us in, they're calling us now and they wanted to see us. And the accurate data reduce operational costs. So actually picking up operational, again, there's not many FM films, but Homer Simpson working on his iPad there while the building's on fire. We've developed a system that I think is a first, and I know I've been to a lot of lectures in the States on this, bringing BIM and the CAFM system, computer-aided facilities management, into a push and pull. So the guys, when you're operating that building, you're out in the field with your iPad, you can see a light fitting, you click on the light fitting on the model, brings down the data, you report that it needs changing, goes into your Outlook calendar and it gets ordered, and everything's done out there, and it updates that information on the whole system. That's the simplistic term of where we've been doing it. We've been working with Autodesk and FSI, a software company. We've now got that. We've gone through the pilot project. We're putting it into an education project, and now the UK government on one of our educational projects is now using that as an exemplar of how to do that. Now that in a sense is a first in what it's doing and the efficiency of that. Where before O&M manuals used to turn up, contractors as we do, there you go, off to the client. It's a load of rubbish. Well, it is basically a load of rubbish. And FM people, 3-year contracts, make their money on resurveying because the previous data is no good and they start from fresh. That's inefficient. It should be moved on with the transparency of that information. So the old school data is that the client gets involved at the beginning, not much doing construction, and then to try to sort out the problems when the building's finished. Contractor comes on board and then disappears as soon as the building's finished. An FM comes on board as soon as the building's finished and doesn't know anything and starts off from fresh. Not very efficient. There is conflicts within that. So looking at the BIM way of moving forward, the client is informed and aware in the whole process. The contractor we're looking at should be involved a lot more, and we're looking at the government soft landings. There are 3 years at least, but we're looking at longer contracts to sort that out. And FM are brought on board to learn about what can be gained from that. Simple things, and bringing that data into the BIM model and using that to efficiency. Energy efficiency, actually, a lot of issues with buildings is that you design them one way and they don't perform. There's going to be legal issues where, clients are going to come back and say, well, actually, we want the money, we've had to spend more on this building. With the system that we can do and operating and collaborating closer together, it can be a lot more efficient. So it's looking at energy and performance, enhancing value through that system. Working with Autodesk on actually putting sensors within equipment on chairs and understanding how that building's being used, and then informing the client immediately how that building can be better used. So with real-time dashboards for those clients. Let's say government soft landings. In the UK, we talk about BIM by 2016 for public buildings. Actually, the government soft landings is more onerous, and I don't think people have actually looked at this. The 3-year review of the contractors are meant to look after that building is going to be much more onerous, and it's for the betterment of all. So, in a sense, success needs just one step in the right direction. It is that leap of faith, and I think whatever size project, whether a type refurbishment, new build, you can take that. And I think the fact is, what we're finding in the UK, it's basically, if you don't listen and act, it's go BIM or go home. In 2 years' time, a lot of businesses will be out of business if they don't pick this up, because other businesses will be moving on so quick. But I say the bigger practices, like ourselves or whatever, we're supporting other people and helping those how they can move forward, because it's to our benefit to let that happen. So I managed to get through that. Apologies for the speed of that, but I think hopefully that just gives a flavour, and by all means, we'll pick up questions and answers later. Thank you.